Well, it's really hard to believe that we're actually at this point. Somehow, we did find ourselves in downtown LA heading to a film shoot for EONBLADE after all these years. So we arrived at our studio and we had Kaiser Johnson with us. My fight choreographer Dylan Hintz, who came in from New York, was also with us. And I had devised this kind of fencing sequence to sort of showcase Rotham's skill and also kind of introduce his character. It comes from stories of L. Ron Hubbard fencing in the Pasadena house, the Aleister Crowley cult. And of course, if you don't know this, L. Ron Hubbard kind of got the idea for Scientology from hanging out at that house. He saw how Aleister Crowley's sort of pyramid scheme cult worked, and he took that idea and sort of scientized it and created Scientology. I was kind of trying to recreate that vibe of, Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard and their weird occult rocket scientist friends fencing in the OTO house. So we rented this standing set to sort of pass as Rotham's house. And as soon as we got into the location, I told Dylan and Kaiser to just go ahead and start working on the fencing match. And Dylan had worked it all out in advance, but he had to teach it to Kaiser. So I gave him a few hours to work on that. And the rest of the crew, we all just started unloading the van, and I then just started working out lighting as they were rehearsing the fight. I started setting up lights around them. And a bunch of my friends from Sweden also started showing up, of course. Jake E., who was playing Richter, and Hasse Bronten, famous Swedish comedian and also a former Swedish intelligence officer, was playing Father Held. And they brought with them Titus Parr, who is a Swedish film director himself. He's directed like a Steven Seagal movie and all this. He was filming behind the scenes stuff, and a lot of the footage that you're going to see here was actually filmed by him. I purposely put that fencing match up front like that so that people would have time to loosen up and get to know each other. When Kaiser and Dylan were ready, they were able to perform the whole fight from beginning to end, and they did that over and over again for me. I filmed it from many different angles, and we finished shooting it very, very quickly. Now, this whole time, there was this cacophony of construction going on outside, and this is a theme for the entire week. There was construction going on right outside the door of the studio, which was not soundproof in any way, but nowhere else on the street. It was just right in front of our door. And they were tearing out the entire sidewalk, cutting trees down, cutting up the trees, repouring concrete, all of this, right outside of our door and nowhere else on the street. So the whole time we're preparing for and shooting this fight, I'm going like, well, we'll do all of this stuff that doesn't require sound first, and then eventually we're going to get to a scene where we'll need it and they'll probably be done. Well, we got to that point where I had to film something where a person had to speak, and nothing had slowed down. It had nothing else really that I could shoot, even for the rest of the week, that didn't require audio to be recorded. Jake basically had to say like 2 words, and we just got the mic right up in there and were able to get it despite the noise. Now, the next scene, which was the last scene of the day that I had scheduled, was in the room where the door was, on the other side of which was this storm of construction. It was the scene was a very quiet, very dramatic dialogue sequence between Hasse and Jake and Kaiser. I just decided to go ahead and shoot it. All of the actors had everything memorized, and everything was blocked out, and they just could go through it without a hitch every time I said action. But there was a guy running a jackhammer right outside the door, and the floor was shaking. And I just said, no, it's going to work. We'll just keep shooting it. I would get basically, 3 focal lengths. I'd get like a wide with like a 25 millimeter, and then I'd get a medium with a 50 millimeter, and then I'd get an extreme close-up with 120 millimeter. And extreme close-up, we just get that mic right up in their face. The sound editing software today is amazing. I was able to clean up almost all of that stuff. For the stuff that I couldn't clean up, we actually recorded just the dialogue on the other side of the building, with everybody huddled up as close as they could get to that mic. And the actors were so good, they just nailed it precisely as they did it in the room. So we had everything we needed to make that scene sound perfect. You would never believe that there was a war happening right outside of that room, and that the floor was shaking. I'm especially grateful for Kaiser and Jake and Hase, because they didn't refuse to do the scene. They did it every time I said action, no matter what was happening. And it was a ridiculous situation, but they were such pros. And we all went out to dinner together, and I let it hit me that I had just filmed on my first real shooting day on the set of EONBLADE. I had high hopes that the construction would be over when we got there the next morning. And you'll find out next time whether or not that was true.